One of my favorite storylines of this early season is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and specifically how Karl-Anthony Towns is working this year and how well he has adjusted from a quote-unquote down year last year. And it's not like anything super radical has changed, but rather it's incremental progression and guys locking in and buying into their roles. Last year was a big down year statistically for Cat, who had been one of the best offensive players in the year. And last year, it was the Cat stuff we've always seen. A lot of like ISO post-ups, which he wasn't converting at the highest rate, taking bad shots in double teams. A lot of stagnant offense with maybe some screens or some cuts around Towns, but for the most part, it's just Karl-Anthony Towns standing around waiting for someone to make a play or for him to make a play, and he gets turned over in this situation. And like I said, last season Cat was still very good on offense, but the spacing was not always perfect as he had to work really hard to get that tight space, finish that beautiful little Euro step and one. And the offense just moved a little slowly. Gobert is a lot better this year than he was last year offensively. Town waits a beat and has to hit a really tough contested shot, which of course he can make. But the theme of the offense this season has been making things easier and making them simpler and having Towns play in a more off-ball secondary attacking role next to the blossoming Anthony Edwards. Now, he still does have these post-up moments, and I still think this is where the worst of his offense is, where he's driving into multiple defenders and putting up a tough shot, not necessarily being physical enough to draw a foul, or kind of working into defenders where he doesn't have space, turning the ball over because of some of those persistent physicality issues that he's had his whole career. But it looks so much better when we simplify things, like Cat working as a trail man, getting downhill. He is a nightmare for most true fives and has been for his whole career. Really good job by Gobert setting this step up here, and Valanciunas has no chance at stopping Karl-Anthony Towns from barreling at him towards the rim. It's simple stuff, simpler early offense action. Cat has thrived as a cutter this year. I don't have synergy access these days, but I would imagine his cut and roll and spot up play types are more frequent than they were last year. He's attacking off of the catch into space, and just look how much space Cat has. When he's not facing up, isolating, the defense doesn't have time to rotate and adjust. He just goes right off the catch. Absolutely nothing any of these poor Suns defenders can do. Cat is a dominant big man in terms of handling and finishing and shooting still, but just like it is for basically every player, things are so much easier when the defense isn't totally set up to stop you. Again, we see the kind of space that Towns has to work with here. Whole right side cleared out, wide open paint, and just uses his size and his strength and his touch to get to his spot. Again, not so radically different from the stuff that he's done throughout his career, but it's simpler. His role is more diverse. We see a nice dribble handoff keep right there. And it really seems like he's buying into this easy stuff. Again, early offense, attack a great spaced floor, and blow by Tobias Harris. Not normal 7-footer stuff. And this is the stuff that people came to expect from Cat and were kind of disappointed with last year. But with Anthony Edwards taking over as the main primary on this team, and with the emergence of so many other good players, Towns slotting into this secondary role has been a nightmare. An absolute nightmare for defenses to contend with at this point. He's scoring layups on the roll more often. And I think statistically, it's interesting to note that he is shooting 74.4% of his shots come off of assists. That is easily the highest rate of his whole career, especially at the basket, where we saw plays like the roll, plays like him cutting. He's much more willing to get himself looks at the rim, and he's driving very often. The efficiency is not amazing, but it's still good. about the same as last year, but even though the numbers are pretty similar, you can see how effective Towns working and driving downhill is. I'm intrigued about the three-point volume. It's kind of declined since his offensive peak when he was one of the best offensive players in the league. And I don't know if it's like a personal choice or a coaching or a lineup decision, but what always made him such a special three-point shooter was not just how good he was at making them, but the volume and the off-movement threes and the pull-up threes, which is not as big of a part of his game these days. But that makes sense given the way that their offense is and their roster is now. He doesn't need to be that. And when he doesn't need to be that, his passing can shine more. Another beautiful closeout attack, lob to Gobert. We saw this chemistry between Gobert and Towns start to gel a little bit last year, but not nearly as much as it's been this year. Herb Jones has to close out hard to Cat because he's an incredible shooter. Easy blow by. Jonas steps up, lob to Gobert. This interior passing was not there to this degree last year. And even though his assist numbers have dropped just because he's on the ball less, I think the quality of his passing has improved. Really great, quick decisions as well. This lefty kick out was absolutely beautiful here. We see another kind of maybe fake DHO here, or just kind of keeping into the baseline here, hang midair. Perfect lefty pass to Ant for the triple there. These kind of higher level passes just weren't present last year. And it seems like most of his turnovers are less of like bad decisions and more just bad accuracy, which has always been kind of an issue for him, and it still is. Great job reading this high-low. And if you hit Gobert like right here, that's an easy dunk, but Cat misses a little bit high. But overall, I think the passing this year has been really, really great. He's confident taking these extra passes. Defenses have to close out to him, treat him like the deadly shooter he is, and he's been good taking advantage. He's much more decisive when he is at the high post. Oftentimes in this spot, he would just kind of stand around, wait for someone to make a play, and having like better offensive players. Like Naz Reid is playing incredible basketball still, and it's like playing more of a cutting wing, being a smart cutter. Jaden improving, Ant improving. Mike Conley has been excellent this year, and Cat's using his vision as a top key passing hub to find that man right there. More of this like connective extra skip passing stuff has been excellent all year from Towns, where he can use his height to read the floor, be patient, wait for Jokic to kind of jump and move himself out of the way before Mike Conley finds his spot for an easy floater. The passing has just flown so nicely. He works great as a zone breaker too. Teams are playing a lot of zone this year, and it is very hard to zone a guy like Cat with that combination of handling and shooting touch and passing ability. But I think the overall takeaway is just the buy-in and the extent to which Cat has accepted his role as a secondary offensive option, as someone who works more off of closeout attacking and early offense and transition and cuts and pick and rolls than maybe he did before. And though Cat obviously has been an elite face-up, pull-up, movement shooter guy in the past, with this iteration of the Wolves, I think it's definitely best that he has embraced his role as a more like secondary scorer, more of like a Lauri Markkanen type scorer in usage than his old self of a couple years ago, where he was a dominant on-ball scoring and shooting threat. But I think it's cool to see these like small incremental changes that aren't like massive skill set developments, but have and do make big differences for teams like the Wolves who are contending. And having Towns as an engaged and active like secondary scorer is really deadly. Like there aren't many teams whose second best offensive player is better than Karl-Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards, whatever you want to say, and the Wolves are really good in part because of him.